Hey, in today's video, we're going to take a look at a fairly new product from Anker. This is their PowerHouse 767, and this is a 2,000 watt-hour power station that is fairly portable, not as heavy as you might think, although it is kind of a beast. It's a little over 65 pounds, but it's also expandable, so you can use it for emergency backup power as well. Is it worth a look? Let's find out. All right, as you can see, I already got this thing out of the box, but I haven't really gone through the stuff yet. So let's just take a look and see what you get in the box. So you get a user manual here from Anker. You get a little canvas bag. All right, looks like we've got a standard computer-style charge cable, which means no charge brick, presumably. So I'm guessing we can connect that directly to the wall without a charge brick. So that's cool. And then we've got a very long car charger cable with an XT60 connector on it. I would bet this is probably at least 8 feet long, just judging by the number of coils here. That's pretty cool. And then maybe a parallel solar distribution cable here. So yeah, so there's a bunch of XT60 connectors on here to allow you to connect multiple solar panels on this. So let's go run this thing through the usual battery of tests. It's a bad joke. And I'll report back here in just a couple of seconds and find out how it performs. All right, we are back. Man, you know, when Anker reached out to me about this particular power station, I think they suggested maybe like a 5-minute video. Well, apparently they've never seen any of my other power station reviews because I can't do a review in 5 minutes, and especially not with this monster. Let's talk about pricing first. So the retail price on the 767 is $19.99, so just under $2,000. And there's a $200 coupon on the Amazon site right now, so you can get it for, I think, $17.99, which is a pretty damn good deal, especially when you see when we get into this thing, what you're actually getting. Now, on top of that, you can actually expand this thing. This is a 2,048 watt-hour power station, and you can expand it an additional 2,048 with their 760, I think it is, expansion battery. And you can get the bundle for just under around $3,000 for the 4 kilowatt bundle. And I do think right now, at least, there's a coupon code on Amazon for that bundle as well that would bring that price down further. Now, I'll put links to the Amazon listings below if you want to go check those out. But you can also buy this direct on Anker's website, so I'll provide links to that as well. Let's get into more of the specs. So the other thing that jumped out at me when they first made me aware of this product was that it has a 5-year warranty, which is really outstanding. There's only a couple other companies that are doing 5-year warranties at this point, so that is a bit of a standout and something that I really appreciate in a product. It does tell me a lot about how confident that Anker is in this product. Now, in terms of weight, this comes in at 67 pounds, so it is not a lightweight power station, but it's kind of surprisingly still portable despite its weight because it's got these really large handles on either side. It makes it actually pretty easy to get your hands around. And then it's got this spring-loaded telescopic handle in the inside that you can use to roll it around like a piece of luggage very easily with these big heavy-duty rubber wheels. So they did really do a nice job of making this thing very portable despite its large size. Now, as I mentioned, it does have a 2,048 watt-hour capacity without the expansion battery, and it is LiFePO4, so lithium iron phosphate chemistry. So it is rated to maintain at least 80% of its original capacity after 3,000 full charge-discharge cycles, which is really good. That's pretty typical for a LiFePO4 battery. It's not unique to this particular one, but what that does give you is about if you're a daily user, just charging and charging this thing, about 10 years of useful life. And at that point, you still have about 80% battery capacity. So if you're a more casual user like I am, where you're not necessarily cycling this thing full every day, and you're just doing it for maybe a couple of months out of the year at most, you should get well over 10 years of usable life out of this. Now, the AC inverter on the 767 is a 2,400 watt continuous 4,800 watt peak AC inverter, and we're going to test that in a little bit. And as far as charging goes, you can charge this via AC at up to 1,440 watts, I want to say. And that's actually configurable, as we will see when we take a look at the app. But that allows you to charge this thing from 0 to 100% state of charge in 2 hours, which is really fantastic. Now, in terms of solar charging, there's an XT60 connector on the back, and then there's this parallel XT60 distribution block here, or connector block, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But it does support up to 1,000 watts of solar at a maximum voltage of 60 volts and a maximum amperage of 20 amps at that particular voltage. And I was a little bit perplexed by this thing, because usually most of the portable 200 watt panels that I have seen have had a current rating of about 12 amps or so in terms of their short circuit current rating. And if I were to hook 5 of those together, that would be 60 amps, which would significantly exceed the 20 amps that this thing is supposed to be able to handle. So I was trying to figure out how that works. And then I found out Anker actually markets their own 200 watt solar panel, which is spec'd really appropriately for this particular setup. I think it's called their 531 solar panel. It's a 200 watt solar panel, and its short circuit current is actually just about 4 amps. So you can put 4 of these together in parallel and not exceed the 20 amp limitation on the DC input. So that's how that works. Now, if you were to max this thing out at 1,000 watts of solar input, you could charge this thing back up from 0 state up to 100% in just about 2 hours, which really is, again, very good. Now, you may have seen this little GAN prime little badging that they have on the front here. That is referring to their gallium nitride transistors that they use in this. Now, Anker, as you may or may not be aware, even though they're relatively new to the power station business, they have been around for quite a long time, and they've been probably the leading seller of USB battery banks for a very long time. And they have sort of pioneered this transition from silicon-based transistors to gallium nitride, which provide better efficiency in moving electric current through the transistor. They also produce less heat. So this thing is able to be a lot more efficient. It actually requires less input power to achieve the same state of charge as a similar power station with the same capacity using traditional silicon transistors. So it takes less to actually charge this up in terms of actual input, because there's a lot less waste or inefficiency in that gallium nitride transistor. Then a couple of the things that are definitely worth mentioning on the feature side, it does have UPS capability, and we're going to test that in a little bit to make sure that it actually works as designed. And finally, it does have mobile app control. I tested the Android version, and we're going to take a look at that in a few minutes so you can see how all that works. And then in terms of output ports, as you can see on there, again, since Anker has a ton of experience in USB type charging battery banks, they've got 3 USB-C ports on here that support PD 100 watt output. Now, they're not input, they're output only. And then it's got a couple of type A ports that I think are 12 watt each. But then notice it's actually got, over here, it's got 2 car 12 volt sockets, not just one. This is the first power station I've seen that's got 2 of those on it. And as you can see, it's got 4 AC plugs on there that are 120 volts. And I did check that, by the way. I'll run a little clip of that, but it actually came in at, I think, 119.7 volts or something like that. So very nice to have full 120, not just 110. And then it's got a TT30R, also known as an RV30 socket on it. So you can plug this into an RV or a backup generator port for a manual transfer switch in your house, which is something I'm going to show you a little bit later in the video. So I ran the 767 through my usual gauntlet of testing here, and one of the first things I do like to check for is no load draw. So how power hungry is that AC inverter when you're not putting any load on it and just leaving it on? So what I found is this thing will take up about 1.5% of your capacity every hour. So if you accidentally left the AC inverter on for, say, 12 hours and forgot about it and didn't notice it till 12 hours later, you would have lost 18% of your overall capacity just by leaving it on. Now, the cool thing is that's actually fully configurable in the app, as we'll see. Now, I did do an AC discharge test to find out the usable capacity, and I'll run a clip of that while I'm talking here. And you can see here that I kind of initially ran it with a 200 watt draw, and that netted me about 1,690 watt hours out of 2,048. So that's about an 82.5% of rated capacity, which is frankly about average. Now, I kind of expected there to be a little better performance in terms of usable capacity on this. So I ran the test again, and again, I started running it as a 200 watt draw. Then it occurred to me that I could probably pull a lot more power on this, which would cause the AC inverter to not have to run anywhere near as long. So I switched the load midway through that test from 200 watts to about 1400 watts continuous. Drawing the power at a much higher rate, I actually netted a pretty fair amount higher in terms of usable capacity. I got 1792 watt hours, which is 87.5% of rated capacity. So now we're getting above average in terms of rated capacity, or usable capacity to rated capacity. Now I do always like to test for AC inverter load capacity as compared to its rated capacity, and so let's cut to the clip. All right, let's do an AC inverter load test on this 767 from Anker. This thing is rated for 2400 watts continuous up to 4800 watts surge or peak. So let me go ahead and turn on the AC inverter. And we should immediately see that start to climb as my one space heater is already on. So it is drawing 1462 watts. Let me go ahead and turn on my other space heater. So this should add about 800 watts to that. So only when we got over 2000 watts did the fans kick on. Let me add a small space heater here. This will run it up just about 275 watts and then it'll back down to 200. All right, so we are at 2451. Let's go ahead and start a timer. Let's see how long it lets us get away with that. All right, it did cut us off at 6 minutes and just about 30 seconds. We tripped. I think we were slightly over that 2400. So yeah, that definitely is a thing. Let me try rerunning this test. All right, this is getting us very close to 2400 watts. All right, let's see if that'll run for 10 minutes. So we are at 2225. All right. All right, so this thing definitely runs very close to 2400 watts continuous. So I would say that this thing passes. It looks like it does handle 2400 watts continuous as near as I can tell. All right, so as you saw, this thing performs quite well, lives up to its rated capacity as far as I can tell, and it certainly let us run past that 2400 watts for a pretty decent period of time before it cut us off. All right, let's test the UPS capability on this 767. So what should happen is that if I've got a load like a computer connected to this and I disconnect power, it should automatically switch from AC pass-through power to battery power in 30 milliseconds or less, which should be enough time for a UPS, in this case, for a home computer, to keep it from rebooting when I don't want it to. So in order to make sure that it does, in fact, not run off its own battery, I removed the battery from the back of the laptop. So if I pull power from this, it will immediately shut off. So what I want to do is simulate a power outage. Right now, you do have to be at 100% charge for the pass-through charge to begin working. And we are, in fact, at 100%. So I'm going to go ahead and remove power from the 767 and see if it switches over fast enough to battery power for the laptop to keep it from rebooting. So keep your eye on the laptop screen and let's see if it actually does anything. All right, no reboots, no flickers, no nothing. So 30 milliseconds may not be fast enough for some high-end server applications and things like that, but for home use, not a problem. Definitely works. And just to show you that there's no trickery going on here, let me go ahead and unplug the laptop and you'll see that it goes out immediately. So yeah, that's because I removed the battery. So the UPS function on the PowerHouse 767 definitely works. Now, one of the things I really like about this 767 is it does already have a TT30, also known as an RV30 outlet on it. Now, this is not a 30 amp outlet. This is a 20 amp outlet based on the limitations of this inverter. So you can actually plug the 30 amp input from your RV or camper right into the PowerHouse 767 and run your RV or camper right off this unit. Now, the other thing that you can do, which is very cool, and this is actually how I'm going to use it mostly, is with my manual transfer switch. So I've got 6 circuits here peeled off of my main circuit breaker here behind me. And these are my critical circuits in the house: the furnace, the refrigerator, the garage, my computer room, stuff like that. And I can run one or more circuits depending on, up to 20 amps worth of output. And basically I just plug this thing right into the unit here, and that allows me to then automatically back up or switch over to backup power whenever I need to run something off of my manual transfer switch. Now, since I have a manual transfer switch, it's still manual. It's not automatic because I still have to come down here and flip a breaker. But you can have an automatic transfer switch installed, in which case, if the main AC power supply goes out, this thing automatically switches over and continues powering whatever load you put on it right from the battery. So, very cool. All right, let's do a flyby of the Anker mobile app. So let me go ahead and turn on the Bluetooth function here. Looks like a long press, and it's broadcasting right there. All right, let me go ahead and launch the app. I think I've already logged in, so it's asking me to add devices. So it looks like it's looking for the PowerHouse, and it seems like it found it. So I'll click Done, and there we go. So, all right, let's connect a load to it and see what happens. And then I will activate the AC output from the app. I've not used the app before, so we're learning this as we go. I just heard the inverter click on, and there we go. Oh, cool. There's actually a plot that is populating. Wonder what this button next to the power does. So it's cool. It looks like this button is a timer. So I can have the AC output automatically shut off. That is actually very cool. I love that idea. You can even customize it, but it even gives me a little countdown timer on the app. That is excellent. I love that idea. All right, so I can see, turn on DC here, and I've got a timer for DC as well. So power saving mode, that's a button that I can press here, or I can enable it here. And so if I happen to be charging something, when that device is no longer pulling power, with power save mode, it'll automatically shut itself down when all of the devices that are connected are no longer consuming power or putting a load on the AC inverter, or the DC output, I would imagine. I assume brightness here is for, for the light. Okay. All right, let's see what's in the little gear settings icon. So I can limit the AC recharging power. Well, this is handy. If you're on a circuit that has already got a pretty significant load on it, you don't want this thing to pull 1440 watts because you're probably going to trip a breaker and overload that circuit. So it may be better to set this down to maybe something like 400 watts, for example. Another reason why you might want to do this is because charging at lower rates will actually put less stress on the batteries and allow them to have a longer cycle life. So that's pretty good. Screen brightness, okay, so it's on mid right now. This is handy. I could take it all the way up to bright, but that might be handy to leave that on bright because these kinds of displays are sometimes hard to see in the sunlight. Screen timeout, 30 minutes. I like that. It really annoys me when I have screens that shut off after like 10 seconds. Yeah, I like this app. This is a very solid app. So for Anker's first foray into mobile app control on a power station, they're doing a good job. Much like their subsidiary, Soundcore, does a fantastic job on their headphones apps as well. They're very modern interface, very functional. So, great job to the guys at Anker on this particular product. All right, so as you can see, that app is actually pretty useful. It's got a lot of cool little control features in it, and I was pretty impressed. So what kinds of things can you run with the 767? Well, the shorter answer is pretty much anything that doesn't draw more than 2400 watts continuous, but that's kind of a cop-out answer for some of you, I'm guessing. But that pretty much includes anything in your house except for an electric dryer or an electric range, an electric furnace, gas furnace, no problem, but not an electric furnace, not an electric water heater. Gas water heater, again, no problem because those don't use electricity. But anyway, yeah, good for just about everything in your house except an electric dryer and an electric range. Now, outside of your house, this thing could actually power a sump pump or a 1 horsepower water pump. Those typically draw between around 2,000 watts continuous, about 4,000 watts surge, and that is well within the spec of this AC inverter, so no problem there. All right, let's talk about the pros and cons, and I'll start with the pros this time because it's quite a list. So first of all, it is surprisingly portable despite its large size, and I owe that largely because of these big handles and plus the telescopic handle and the wheels. I also like the fact that it's got these little rubber nubs on the side of this handle, which are actually serve a purpose because you can actually tilt this thing up and set it down vertically. And you can actually run it in this orientation because having the handle down here with these little rubber nubs leaves plenty of space underneath for ventilation. So the cooling fans are able to function normally even in this orientation. So I like the fact that you can actually run it like this if you needed to for a particular space. I also like the fact that this thing does act as a UPS. As you saw in the clip that I played previously, UPS mode works fine, and this thing performs well. Now, fast charging, as I mentioned before, this thing does charge very, very quickly for a power station this size. I like the fact that it's got two 12-volt car sockets. I also like the fact that it's got that TT30R socket on it, also known as the RV30. Just do keep in mind that it is not, despite its name, a 30 amp port. It's actually, in this case, a 20 amp port. This thing is whisper quiet, even when the fans do come on, and they don't come on until about 2,000 watts. So you got to be really working this thing over for the fans to come on. But when they do, even then, they're relatively quiet. So this is like the quietest power station that I have reviewed, bar none. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that 5-year warranty again. That's really outstanding and does show Anker's confidence in this product. So the last pro that I think is worth mentioning is the fact that Anker has been dealing with portable power delivery and storage products for quite a while. And they've been an industry leader in that area. So you can be sure that they're still going to be around in a year or 10. All right, so let's talk about cons. Oh, it doesn't have wireless charging. I guess that's a con. But I will say in its defense, not many large power stations have wireless charging. So I guess it's probably in pretty good company. All right, so what are my final thoughts on the PowerHouse 767? Well, I guess let me start by saying that, despite the fact that Anker is a relative newcomer in the specific portable power station space, they've been around a long time, as I said, producing industry-leading USB battery banks and products like that. So they definitely have experience. And if this product is any indication, they are in this market to be a major player. And if they ever decide to get into the 8 to 10 kilowatt expandable home backup systems with split phase capability, yeah, I would be pretty concerned if I were Bluetti and EcoFlow, because these guys are bringing it. This PowerHouse 767 is just very well engineered from the ground up. The app is top notch, the performance is outstanding, and the price isn't bad either. So very, very impressed. So I have no hesitations about recommending this if you're in the market for something in that 2,000 watt hour capacity class. So hopefully you found some of this information useful. If you did, please consider giving me a thumbs up on the video. I would really appreciate that little extra effort to do that. I've got a ton more of this stuff coming, including some more unique ones that I think you're going to want to see. So consider hitting the subscribe button. I do hope to see you in the next one. And until then, have fun out there.